Hello everybody, and welcome back to Caskin Point. Today we have a very fun blind. So as many of you know, Jack Daniel's 14 just released about 2 weeks ago, and people have been going nuts for it. People are saying that this is already the whiskey of the year, that this is easily beating a lot of the best releases of the last few years, Russell's 15, Good George T Staggs, and so I want to find out if that's true. So I've built out a very fun blind where we have some of the best whiskeys from some of the best distilleries in the last few years. So to go down the list, we have Jack Daniel's 14, of course, from the Jack Daniel's distillery, released this year, 126.3 proof, $150 MSRP, and a secondary that's currently still around $700. We then have the Woodford Redux, I believe to be the best Woodford product in many, many years. This is a 12-year, 139.4 proof, $100 MSRP for a 375, so I'll just say a $200 MSRP, and then a secondary that's about 50% more, on $150, $160, or about $300 to $320 for a full bottle. We then have Parker's DBB. This is a 2022 release from Heaven Hill, 132.2 proof, MSRP of $200, and secondary also about $675, so right around that same point of Jack Daniel's 14. Then George T Stagg 2024, an absolutely delicious release, one of my favorite George T Staggs in many, many years. And this is, of course, from the Buffalo Trace Distillery, $125 MSRP, $675 secondary. So again, right in line with the Parker's DBB and where Jack Daniel's 14 currently is. And then the fifth is, of course, good old Russell's 15. This has an MSRP of $250 from the Wild Turkey Distillery and an MSRP of about $525. So we have an expensive flight, a fun flight, really just the best bottles, I think, from Wild Turkey, from Buffalo Trace, from Heaven Hill, that I've seen in the last few years that I think would give Jack Daniel's some really good competition here. And then, of course, I did toss in the Woodford Redux. I think it's an amazing release. I know some people haven't absolutely loved it, and I think it's because it is a little bit more unique. It's very dark chocolate and espresso bean forward, which to some people is really a turnoff, and it's not your typical bourbon, so I get it, but I thought it was good enough to toss into this blind here. So I'm very excited. We're going to really find out today how good Jack Daniel's 14 really is, how much it can stack up against these really great bottles from Kentucky. So let's get right into it here with glass number 1. So you guys will know what I'm drinking. I obviously don't know what I'm drinking. And we're going to go through tasting notes here. We're going to rate everything. We're going to rank everything. We're going to find out if Jack Daniel's 14 is going to really win out on this top tier flight. The nose on this one is very rich and oaky, with a good amount of cherry as well. A good amount of caramel on this one as well. Getting a little bit of that kind of charcoal note on as well, kind of like a tobacco smoke note on this. Overall, it smells very good. Interesting. Very rich on the palate. A good amount of cherry, a good amount of oak. Definitely still have that smoke note that's really funky here. Now, I'm not going to stake my guesses as to what I think these are, due to the fact that we do have some top tier products, but flavor-wise, they are actually pretty different. I have a good feeling I may know what a lot of these are, so I'm going to definitely avoid taking any guesses here. Like, I have an idea of what I think this is. I have an idea of what I think a lot of these are, probably just off the nose. But anyways, this is very, very good. Not blowing me away. I think the finish is about medium length. Yeah, definitely getting a lot of rich oak on this one. This is definitely one of the older releases, I think. Wow, this is so good. I mean, to be fair, I guess we have Jack Daniel's 14 is 14 years, Russell's 15 is obviously 15, George T Stagg is 15, Parker's is a blend of 13 and 15, and then the Redux is 12. So actually, the Redux is the youngest at 12 years old. So we have a very old flight today, a 12 to 15 year flight of the best products from the best distilleries. Very fun flight. And fun fact, I actually have bottles of all of these things, except for the Jack Daniel's 14, where I have the mini bottle here, which is right here. So I don't have a bottle of that yet. Hopefully I'll get one soon. Man, this is just so nice here. Let's take a second sip. Yeah. Very rich oak, smoke, and cherry. The smoke note is weird. And that one is not what I typically get on whiskeys, but very strong smoky note on this, like almost a mesquite note on this, which is good. Kind of reminiscent of like the Old Forester King Ranch in that mesquite, but it's very, very light. It's definitely much more of a smoke than it is that kind of mesquite, but it's still very good. And I think that oak and that cherry really bringing a lot of balance to that pour. But that's a rich one. But let's go on to glass number 2. Oh, this one is just a huge vanilla bomb. Wow. Great amount of cherry on this one as well. Tons of oak. Oh, that is really sweet and decadent. A lot of caramel, too. Wow. That is super sweet on the nose. And there's definitely more and more oak as I keep going back to it. But wow, I mean, the thing that's most at the forefront here is that sweetness. Let's take a sip. Wow, that's good. That's really, really good. That's a really rich oak. I think compared to the first one here, that finishes a little bit longer on this one. I think it's a little bit more potent. I think it's very, very flavorful here, and I really love that sweetness. It is, though, a surprisingly similar flavor profile. Like, this definitely has the cherry on it. This definitely has the oak. It definitely has a little bit of that smokiness as well, which is fun. But the vanilla here is what's really making this one unique. Wow, that is so, so good here. Let's take a second sip. Oh yeah, really rich. Definitely drinking pretty hot. Definitely a good amount of proof on that one. I don't think it's drinking like a hazmat, but it's definitely drinking pretty close. But so much cherry, so much vanilla on that one. Just a really rich oak to it. Wow, that is good. And towards the late palate, definitely getting some nutmeg and some cinnamon as well, some really nice spice characteristics. To me, this is really complex, a good bit more complex than glass number one, with a relatively similar flavor profile. Like, I mean, these are obviously clearly around the same age, but this one is just more powerful. It's just better. And I'll leave this glass number two for now, go on to glass number three. Oh, wow. This one is also really, really sweet. This is pure cherry candy. Oh my god. It's just cherry candy. Oh, that's really, really nice. Wow. There's definitely some caramel in there, a little bit of vanilla in there, definitely a little bit more oak as I keep going back to it. But where I think glass number two is really a mix of the vanilla, the caramel, and the cherry, I think glass number three is just pure cherry candy. And yeah, you're getting a little bit of that vanilla, a little bit of that caramel, but I think glass number two, definitely much more balanced. I think glass number three here, a lot more cherry, which isn't bad. It's definitely not worse. I really like my cherry. Let's take a sip. Oh, wow. The oakiness in there just fills the palate. Oh, that is really, really nice. It definitely opens up to a little bit of that nutmeg and cinnamon towards the late palate as well. Those kinds of baking spice characteristics on this. Pure cherry candy on this one. And when I say cherry candy, I know I describe different kinds of cherry. There's like, maraschino cherry, there's cherry candy. Cherry candy to me is like if you went into the supermarket and got like a piece of cherry candy. Like your very red cherry, but so sweet and so decadent and so rich that it's basically like a candy. And that's all over this pour. And that's really, really nice. For me, it's, again, a relatively similar flavor profile than 1 and 2. I think I initially said that all these whiskeys are going to have really different flavor profiles. I don't think that's necessarily the case. They're definitely enough to differentiate them, but you have rich oak, you have cherry on all of the pours we've had so far, and it makes sense. We're looking at 12 to 15-year whiskeys from all these distilleries, and they're all in Kentucky, of course, except for the Jack Daniels, which is in Tennessee, so they can't all be that different. No, they're pretty different. Let's take a second sip here. It's great. It's great whiskey. And the finish on that one, a little bit shorter than I would have expected. That being said, as I say that, the cherry actually kind of came back a little bit. It's definitely a flash of flavor in the front palate that goes away a little bit. But then, actually now the finish is just pure cherry candy and oak. Okay, I take it back. That finish is long. It's good. It's very good. Very similar to me to that second glass. I am liking them both a bit more than glass number one, but we'll see. We'll see how things develop here. I think as we go back here, we're close enough on a lot of different elements that we may be seeing different things. But let's go on to glass number 4. This was a lot of fun. Oh, wow, these whiskeys are great. I mean, every whiskey here is somewhere between, I think, at least an 8.4 and probably about an 8.8, 8.9. Which is just delicious whiskey. And I tried to pour around 3/4 of an ounce on each one. Didn't want to drink too much in one shot, but man, I mean, I could just drink this whiskey all day. These are all delicious. This one, it's pure dark chocolate and espresso bean. That one is very unique compared to the rest here, but really good. Let's take a sip. I have a feeling I know what this one is, but I'm not going to say anything. Wow. So this one really starts off with dark chocolate. Then it just gets pure espresso bean. I mean, that finish is just pure coffee. If you like coffee, man, this is such a unique whiskey. This is so, so good. This is what I think it is. I reviewed this relatively recently, and I loved it then, and I love it now. This is just so, so good. Super rich. The thing is, it's not super complex, but it's super unique. You get these 3 notes just absolutely in your face. Definitely drinking pretty hot, which I like. I like the proof on this one. And this is so, so good. Let's take a second sip. Yeah. So, and that's it. Definitely relaxed me a little bit. There's definitely dark chocolate in there. But in the mid-palate, there's this really awkward maltiness and oakiness that I think is combating with each other a little bit, which isn't the most pleasant thing in the world. But then you could just get the espresso bean. And so I think people may be turned off by this whiskey in that mid-palate because there is definitely malt on that one, and people don't love malt. And I kind of understand it, but I really love that. I mean, that is a bottle that, if it's what I think it is, I would pay whatever secondary is for that bottle a few times over. That is just absolutely delicious. That one, long finish. I think when I compare it to these others, though, it's going to lose out on its complexity. I wish it was a little bit more complex. I wish if there was just a cherry note in there, if there was basically any other note besides the dark chocolate and espresso bean and that kind of funky oak in it, that gave me something else to grasp onto, that whiskey would probably win this flight because it hits your points on uniqueness. It hits your points on power. It hits your points on being just a genuinely enjoyable pour from start to finish without any roughness around the edges. Delicious pour, but let's go on to glass number 5. I think I know what everything is. Look, it's a blind. I don't know what everything is, but just based off of drinking everything, I have my predictions, and I'll save the predictions until right before we do the reveal, and we'll see if I go 5 for 5. And I hope I don't. I hope, something messes with me and I'm not totally correct on things. But this one here has a very strong berry note, and this one also has a good amount of cherry, a good amount of oak. Wow. I mean, that is just so rich. See, the thing is, compared to glass number 4 here, glass number 5 just easily beats it on the nose. Like, there's just so much more complexity on glass number 5, where I think that's where glass number 4 is really going to lose it. Even if it has that proof, even if it has that potency, it just needs more elements to it. Which is to say, for what it is, I think it's great, but yeah, this glass number 5 is a good bit better. Let's try it. Much lighter on the palate, but pure blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, some cherry, definitely some rich oak on that. That was very light on that pour, but that could just be coming off of the last pour. So we will take a second sip here pretty quickly. But that was really light on the palate, which was kind of funky. Let's take another sip. Oh yeah. Okay. A lot more richness on the second sip as expected. I didn't want to give too many comments on that first sip, but that is just pure caramel candy with that dark fruit. There's a good amount of oakiness on it, but not as much as I think some of the other pours here, which I think is nice. I mean, this is clearly a very well-balanced pour. I think it's definitely not going to hit hard for those that are absolute proof hounds. There's a lot of richness on that. There's a lot of complexity on that. You have all of your sweetness there. You have all of these really dark berries, but you do have still a little bit of red fruit. You do have a really nice oakiness on it. You do have some vanilla on that. But that oakiness is interesting. Like, it's more of a tobacco oakiness. I think more similar to what I was getting out of glass 1 and 2. Very different from 3 and 4. where that oakiness is complex. Like, that oakiness isn't just pure oak. I think there's tobacco in there. I think there's leather in there. I think there's a little bit of smoke in there. Very, very good. But okay, we've gone through the 5. Let's go through everything again. Let's give some ratings and let's give some rankings. All right, so I'm thinking these 2 are my favorite just based off of what I had so far. So maybe I'll save those for the end, but I don't know. Let's mix it up a little. Let's save glass 4 for a bit here because I think it's higher in proof, so I don't want it to kind of blow up the palate. Let's go to glass 1 here, then we'll do glass 5, and then we'll figure it out. Let's go back to glass 1. Oh yeah, this one's definitely opened up a little bit more to a nicer cherry candy on it. But still a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke on this one, a little bit of charcoal on this one. A little bit of banana on this one as well. Really good though, really good. There's definitely the spice in there as well. Very complex pour on this one. Really, really nice. Let's take a sip. Oh yeah, that's delicious. I mean, that is so, so good. That is pure cherry candy with a good amount of oakiness on it, with a good amount of caramel on it. That being said, I think there are finishes here that are longer. I think there are pours that are more complex. I'm going to rate that an 8.4, which I think is a very fair rating. I think it's very good, but I don't think it's holding up to what I saw to glass 2, 3, and maybe even glass 5. But it's good. I mean, it's really good. That smokiness on it, the cherry on it. I think if you like that kind of really strong smokiness, but it's clearly in the caliber with these. It's clearly competing with these. That is very, very good. But let's check glass number 5. Oh man, this one's opened up to even richer oak. I really like this whiskey. Let's take a sip. Very rich. Very good. Slightly better than glass number 1, but very close. Between an 8.4 and 8.5 on it, just because I think it's better than glass number 1, but I don't know if it really even deserves an extra point. That's tough. I'm going to rate it an 8.5. I'm going to give it that 0.1 boost. I think it's marginally better, but I don't think it's that much better. I think it is close. I think they're definitely the same caliber. I think if the secondaries on these bottles were around the same, I could go either way depending on my mood. If you want a more berry, caramel, oak, tobacco kind of thing, you go here. If you want that oak and tobacco and the similar kind of oak richness, but instead you want more of a cherry, and you definitely go on glass number 1 here. Definitely competing with each other. But today I take glass number 5. But let's go on to glass number 4. Dark chocolate and espresso. It's so good. It's so good. If you like those notes, it's so, so good. Let's take this final sip. It's great. I'm going to have to rate it last today, most likely, just because it doesn't compete with any of these on complexity. But when it comes to just really, really enjoying something that's niche, something that is unique, something that you're not going to taste on every other whiskey, but something that it does really, really just incredibly well, where dark chocolate and espresso, it's not just espresso, it's not just dark chocolate, it does have both of those elements in it. That is an 8.4, but it's worse than glass 1 and glass 5 for sure. But let's go back to 2 and 3, the 2 that I like the most, and let's see what I think about them. Cherry candy, caramel candy, vanilla. It's so good. It's so good. Let's take the sip. Wow. I mean, when you put it up against glass number 4, and even 5 and 1, that richness is just so evident. There's clearly more complexity on there. There's clearly a really, really deep cherry, but it comes in with this oak, this really fiery oak. There's oak that has multiple layers to it. There's a tannic oak in it. There's a sweet oak in it. There's a vanilla in it. There's so many different kinds of oak in it, but yet you still also have a different kind of vanilla in it. You definitely have some berries in it as well. You definitely have some really rich caramel. You have some toffee, some butterscotch. It's a great pour of whiskey. I mean, that's a really great pour of whiskey. Debating on the ranking of it, I'm going to give it an 8.7. I think it's a good bit better than the others that I've had so far. But I mean, I think I could change my mind on that whiskey over time. It's really featuring the oak and the cherry so much. but we'll see. If it is what I think it is, I don't know, it's really good. But anyways, let's go on to this glass number 2. Vanilla. Cherry. So good. Oh, that's so good. The nose on this one is the best. Let's try the whiskey. So rich. So rich. So much vanilla. Oh my god. That's amazing. That gives me a lot of what I get out of glass number 3. But as opposed to just the oak and the cherry, it kind of takes away the complexity of the oak a little bit, but instead gives me just a flash of vanilla, a flash of caramel, a lot more than I get on glass number 3. It's close. I'm going to say it's better today, but I think I could definitely change my mind on that. I think it's also an 8.7. I think we have an 8.7 on glass number 2, 8.7 on glass number 3, 8.5 on glass number 5, 8.4 on glass number 1, and then 8.4 on glass number 4 here. Now, I have my predictions, and so I'm just going to say them because I've been thinking about them this entire time. Jack Daniels, Parker's DBB, GTS, Redux, and Russell's 15. But let's find out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Those are my predictions before we get into it here. Which is to say, the Jack Daniels definitely held its own against these whiskeys, but I think DBB and GTS, they're just another level for me, but definitely at least competing with Russell's 15, which, I mean, these are all on pretty similar levels to me. Maybe these aren't on a different level, but they're definitely a little bit better. But anyways, let's check glass number 4 first. So I thought this was the Redux. This is the Redux. Okay, so we're 1 for 1 so far. And the Redux is, we have the Redux right here. So that is number 5. So glass number 1 here is, oh, it's interesting. That was Russell's 15. I wasn't perfect. Wow, that's Russell's 15? That's so interesting. That's not as much dark. Huh. Honestly, going back to them, now that one gets a lot more of that kind of charcoaly notes. That's why we do blinds. I mean, that's why we do blinds. I totally thought that was a Jack Daniel's 15. Wow. I mean, that Russell's 15 is just not what I thought it was. Interesting. I mean, you know what? The sample of Russell's 15 here. I want to make absolutely sure that this is what it is. I mean, that's just so interesting here. No, that's what it is. So interesting. So, Russell's 15, which I do have a bottle of, but that did come from a sample, and it came from a reliable source, so the sample's good. So that's number 4 here. Wow. So Jack Daniel's is at least in the top 3 here. I'll be surprised if it's 1 or 2, but let's find out. I guess I don't know anything anymore. Number 5 is Jack Daniel's 14. Okay. So we're in the craziest in the world. So our Jack 14 here in the middle is going to get 3rd place. Wow, I mean, it beat Russell's 15. That says a lot. Glass number 3 here is the GTS, and number 2 is going to be the DBB. Okay, so not the most insane in the world. I got everything right except for I swapped the Russell's 15 with the Jack Daniel's 15, which is really weird. Don't know how I did that. So this is our ranking here. So we have Parker's in 1st, George T Stagg in 2nd, Jack 14 in 3rd, Russell's 15 in 4th, and Redux in 5th. Love the Redux. It's super unique. It's just not gonna hold up to these in terms of complexity, but it held its own. I mean, look, I rated it an 8.4. I think it deserves to be on the pedestal. I think it totally deserved to be in this flight. But those are some interesting results. I'm very surprised with the Jack Daniel's 14 and Russell's 15 here. I thought that, yeah, I mean, as I'm going back to it, it's definitely giving me more of the Russell's 15 notes that I typically get, those darker berry notes on it. And now this one just smells like smoke. I don't know how that happened. Wow, that's so odd. I don't know. I mean, Russell's, apparently the Jack Daniel's 15, definitely when I went to it the first time, it didn't have as much of those dark berries, but it clearly opened up to a lot of those dark berries. I'm so confused, but I guess that's the nature of a blind. That's the nature of psychology. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. Jack Daniel's 14 totally held its own. But anyways, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Catch you all in the next one.